Welcome back to the Office Marketing Podcast with Mike Swigert, the podcast all about sales tips, mindset, and value bombs. 5 questions to help make your day more productive and learn a thing or two. Here is your host, best-selling author, Mike Swigert.
Hey everybody, thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to the Office Marketing Podcast. I've got a really fun guest. I think we're going to learn a lot about networking, marketing, business development. I've got an absolute rock star when it comes to the business development world. He's had a fun path, fun journey. Chris Maier from Cooper & Company is here. He's going to share with us everything from networking and marketing on a one-on-one to networking marketing in groups. He has started an amazing networking group while doing amazing job doing business development for Cooper & Company. Chris Maier, thank you for taking time out of your day to talk to the Office Marketing Podcast.
I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Chris, real quick, can you share with us your path on, you don't have to say why, but just tell us how you kind of got into this crazy business of construction. Can you walk us through your path?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So really, Mike, it all started back in the demolition days. I was known as the demolition man here in Atlanta. So I worked for a local company. We were taking down big structures from parking garages to large retail establishments and clearing the way for the big hotels and skyscrapers that now fill Atlanta. So during that capacity, I was more of a neutral player. I met every general contractor and I met a lot of end user developers and commercial real estate firms and went to every networking event that there was out there that pertained to general contractors and engineers. So you got to do that. You got to go to all those, that was building my network, I would say 3 years back, and then flash forward until today, I work at Cooper & Company General Contractors and Director of Business Development. I met a tremendous amount of people just through day-to-day encounters and those large-scale networking events. And then decided to start throwing my own and formulating the CCC.
All right. Well, let's talk through through the demolition world and going into the GC world. What are some of the things that you found were most helpful for you for growing the set of business that you're responsible for?
I think it was just having this intrinsic need to help others, to serve. That really is what the best salespeople are all about, is how do I do for others before myself? And I can almost pinpoint it, Mike, to a gentleman of an industrial development firm that came to Atlanta to develop a trucking and receiving terminal. It's now one of the largest here in Atlanta. And I really wanted to help this guy. I just really liked their team. They were great people. And to elevate yourself from not being just an electrician or being somebody in the trenches or a demolition man, I would ask them questions or I'd see things about the site in a different way and about their project that they didn't think about before. And they're all the way in Chicago, right? They got to come here to Atlanta to work on these sites. And I said, throughout my network, throughout meeting all these wonderful people in the industry who I always have in mind, your building is sagging right there. You're going to need a structural engineer to do an assessment. And he's like, you're right. Do you know somebody? And ever since that moment, I elevated myself in value. So that's what you always have to do, so I would tour these buildings as well, these different well-known office complexes. And I knew the demolition was going to be occurring and perhaps they hadn't selected a general contractor yet. So therefore I was able to tie in general contractor and other trades and help my network and create immense value. So that's where that all started.
I love that. There's nothing as a sales guy or as a provider, you have developed a nice relationship with someone if they're asking you, hey, Chris, do you know somebody? Hey, Chris, do you know a guy?
Yes.
That's great, Chris. I mean, that's one thing I love about you. And we immediately connected probably because you are a master connector. I mean, that's kind of your forte. It's probably what led to you starting the whole contractors, closers, and connectors. And would you kind of tell us a little bit about that group and sure. Why you started it and what it does?
Yeah, sure. So I started it because I saw a lot of different associations out there. There was always that intrinsic need to help others on a large scale. I never thought it would get to this size, but I had gone to associations that were pertaining to just general networking within chambers of commerce, to general contractors, engineers, architects, and real estate brokers. And I said, what if somebody threw an event and held a platform that would connect the commercial real estate industry, construction, and all three of those, so that literally you can look around the room and create a commercial real estate deal, from senior debt and equity partners to economic development officials and everybody in between. So that's essentially what I did. I found the availability to hold our first event, and I started calling people up. Said, if I threw this thing, would you come? Would you sponsor? 200 people came, and it was a wonderful showing. And still,
wait. Chris, you realize that's not the way the world is supposed to work. You throw your first networking event. You throw your first networking event, and 200 people show up. That's why. Chris, why would 200 people show? I know you're a wonderful guy, magnetic personality, great connector. Why? Why did 200 people come to your event?
I think, and I think it does have a lot to play in with me, though, not to toot my own horn, but I bring a lot of passion to the table, and there's not a lot of people that are the face of a particular organization that believe in the value of networking. There's people that, are that I know that are in their 60s, 70s, and they call it quits. They say, I'm done networking. Why? They don't even like the word networking. I don't know what they connotate it with, but, building relationships should be something that you enjoy. And it's either something you do or you don't. And I certainly do. And I think there's a lot of people in the industry that just love to connect and help others. And that's what this is about.
Okay. Well, let's go into that. So why don't you give a tip to somebody out there that maybe is trying to put together a networking event? What are some tips that you could share with someone? Maybe it was someone just putting together a group of 80 or 800, but like, what are some keys of someone that wanted to organize their own networking event somewhere, anywhere in the country?
So I think you just have to, start that list. Again, we go back into starting a database, wherever that database may come from. If you don't have one, perhaps it's your social media account, and you go in there and you say, what is going to be the focus of my networking event, whether it's construction, whether it's sewing class, or whatever it is that you're going to be. And I think you have to be deliberate. And the more niche your group, there are BNI groups and different national associations that are pretty eclectic. So you have to decide whether I want to go the eclectic route. And, maybe I'm in a profession of insurance that I can, speak to anybody, but in what I'm in, it's very deliberate, very niche, in where I have a certain target audience and people that run in the same circles. So I think that's what you have to decide first. And then you just have to start creating the action and create a deliberate outreach campaign, whether that be a mixture of social media outreach, through phone calls and through text messages, just all types of things. And the tip would be, don't worry about how the first event is. You have to be bold. That first one is always the hardest. I learned that when I was back in the gym industry. I was in the fitness business, and I would throw events for the club. And the person who said, you got to just throw your first one, they will continue to gain momentum. They'll continue to grow. That's what you got to do. You just got to go out and do your first one.
I think I'm sure you're intentionally brilliant. Stephen Covey always talks about sort of like have the end game in mind on anything you do. And
yes.
you touched on it. So I'm listening to you and I'm like, Chris, that's the absolute genius of what you're doing. You're thinking, well, who's the audience? What do they want to get out of it? Who am I putting together to connect? I mean, I'm really, really impressed with what you've done. So those are great.
There's one thing I'll add.
Oh, please do.
What I'm really good at now is not only pairing the right companies together, but understanding who is like-minded in personality. So that's something that I look for when I'm inducting new members into the more private groups that I run that are subsects of the CCC, the Contractors, Closers, and Connectors. I'm bringing in people that I know that are go-givers, that know how to share. They just kind of get it. They're seasoned networking professionals that they could be at any networking event. They're going to lend incredible value. So that's, as things get a little bit more advanced, you could start filtering out who you want to be there. And they will also draw more people into your events, and hopefully people that have large centers of influence as well. And then everything just compounds and works.
That's key. That's key. All right. So now why don't we talk a little deeper, is like, once someone is in an event, I think, you know me, I love networking. I get energized by being in a room. Put me in a room with 200 people and that's nearly my heaven. But for some people that's not, right? So why don't you share some really, why don't we go to like one-on-one networking, right? We don't have to go like super advanced for like someone who's been doing it for 20 years, but like, what are some key basics for someone when it comes to networking in 2021 and beyond?
I hate when people call it an elevator pitch, right? But you got to somehow have, like, within the first sentence. When I was in the demolition business, I used to tell people, my name's Christopher Maier. I'm with Green Circle Demolition. We just took down these major structures at Atlantic Station for Heinz. And you kind of establish credibility in your first sentence by letting them know who you are, who you work for, large client you're working for, and what type of work you do, and where it's at, so they can relate to the proximity of that project. So people in our industry, in construction and real estate, they love to hear that, because they can relate. Oh, I did a project down the street. I work with that client as well. They're like, oh man, we need to talk demolition now, or tell you how that trade ties into our architectural design. I mean, so you got to just establish yourself and think about, what would somebody like to hear, and write it down. Write it down and then read it back to yourself, and you're like, that either sounds good or it doesn't. Like, I actually have a template on my computer of different things, and it's not that I use those templates verbatim when I'm reaching out to people, but I do it in email format too, to look through it, and I say, how does that sound today? Or maybe I'm going to use a version of this, because you're in different states of mind every day when you wake up. Some days I'll create a new template to go off of, because my day is going to be centric to outreaching to certain people, let's say I haven't talked to in a while, and there are certain events going around the industry, or I have another event coming up, and I want to be able to say, hey, by the way, I got something, I'd like to extend an invitation to you. So the message is always changing. You have to constantly read it back to yourself and see how that sounds.
All right. So I have my, got a good elevator pitch. I have my clarity. I have my,
right.
Why don't we just call it like a value proposition, right? We'll call it
That's
that.
Right.
I remember one time I taught a class, and it was helping people. I went into a company, I was helping them on how to network. And I was even telling them where to stand in the room. Like there's certain places where people like to, there's a psychology of it. And that's actually really, you and I could probably talk about that for hours, right? Just psychology.
Yeah, I've never heard this one. I want to hear that. Yeah.
Well, it's just fascinating where it's sort of like when people walk into the room, like, the first person they see, or where they like to, where you're being so far with your back up against the wall, or near the bar, or near the food. Like, it's always a great idea to stand just off of after where people get drinks, or after where people get their food, right? Because that's when they're looking for a connection. So now I've got my coffee. I just made my coffee. I'm looking into the room, right? Now I've come back, and I'm about 20 feet away. Now someone's open for a connection. Standing 20 feet in front of the coffee, on the front side of the coffee, people are kind of like, I just want my coffee. Like, that's all I want. I need my coffee.
You're right.
Right. But now that I have my coffee, now I'm looking to connect. It's these little, just these little things that, like, it's probably natural to most networkers. But if you're not sure, don't stand on the front side of the coffee bar. Hang out on the back side of the coffee bar. Like, it's simple. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot to it.
This episode of the Office Marketing Podcast is brought to you by Fusion Advisory. We help commercial contractors generate leads online profitably. Check us out at fusion-advisory.com.
Well, I've always just been a disruptor. That's kind of my style. And when I was the demo man, it kind of fit in, because I would just disrupt. And I would just kind of go in there with my hand and start extending it out, even if there was a group of 4 or 5 people standing there, until somebody shook it. And once we got into conversation, it's not awkward. It's only awkward if you make it awkward. So I just go out, and they appreciate it. They're like, hey, this guy came up to us, and we've been in our tight knit circle. So you just kind of have to practice that too, is what I tell everybody, is whether it's one person or 8 people, you just walk straight up to that with conviction, stick your hand out and say hello. I mean, that's all you can do, really. What else are you going to do?
Chris, one thing that I've always taught, I don't know, pick the number that you're comfortable with, right? But maybe it's 70% or 80%. But I always tell people, like, if you're going to a networking event, spend at least 70% talking to people you don't know. Like, really,
Right.
like, I feel like that's something, especially if people go to a networking event together, and younger people tend to do this. They'll go to a networking event together and be like, oh, cool, we're at Sweetwater and we've got this great place. And there's 4 of us, we came together and the 4 of us are going to talk all night. And as an older guy with 3 kids, I'm kind of like, if it's a Thursday night and I'm going to be away from my family, I'm going to do everything I can to grow business. Right. Because if it's a Thursday night, I'd rather probably be at home with my family, or I need to be growing business. So that's why for me, it always motivated me to kind of, start conversations with people I didn't know. And that's a pretty good motivator right there.
Agreed.
All right. So now
it definitely changes the program.
All right. So now we're in a networking event. We're doing a good job. We have our value proposition. We're talking to lots of people. What's the goal at a networking event? Not if you're, think of it more of like someone who's not a very evolved networker. What would kind of be a successful networking event? What would you deem a successful event that night or that day?
I think it would be successful if you gathered their contact information, their business card, and you were able to, you don't even have to really set a follow-up appointment, but you could maybe say, hey, let's chat in a couple of days. Would that be all right with you if I reach out and, let's stay in touch? And they say, yeah. And then typically what you do after that event, the sooner than later, while the iron is still hot and while you're in their minds, send them a thank you note or a follow-up for talking with you and say you enjoyed that. And then you could set up something from there, and they have your information digitally, email, and you can continue the dialogue. I don't think a lot of people are concerned about maybe closing a deal on the floor the first time they met somebody. And that's not really what it's about. It's finding as many commonalities as possible and just getting for them to know who you are as a person, perhaps a little bit more about what you do as a company. And maybe they got some value out of something you told them about a project or something interesting. I think it's just about building that rapport on the first encounter.
Chris,
and perhaps you're there with somebody else and you can introduce them to somebody in the room that, like you said, you came with somebody and say, hey, I brought this person, you should know them. So I think that all around would be a great encounter upon the first networking event.
I agree, but the thing that hit my heart of what you just said might be the most valuable and most powerful thing that anybody could get out of this podcast today is getting permission to follow up.
Right.
You said it so smoothly, Chris, but it's something that everybody listening to this podcast needs to remember. And Chris, what you said was you asked for permission to follow up.
Yes.
I'll tell you what, man, that is so powerful, because if you're at a networking event and you and I met and said, like, hey man, I really enjoyed meeting you. Would it be okay if I followed up with you next week? Would it be okay if wow. Because here's the thing is, if someone comes back to you and says, hey man, look, I'm knee deep in projects. I've got 14 bids due next week. Would it be okay if you reached out to me in 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
Yeah. At least,
oh my gosh, that's so powerful. Like,
yes.
I like where you went into it afterwards about being a master connector. I mean, we're going to go into that in a second, but really guys, take one note out of this podcast. If that's all you do, when you go to networking events and you have conversations and you feel like you're aligned in business, ask somebody, hey, is it okay if I follow up with you in a couple of days? Is it okay if I reach out to you? Wow.
Yeah. I think it shows that you have so much interest and you want to continue that conversation. That's what it's about. It's just, you have an immense interest in learning more about them and staying in touch, doing business in the future.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. The next one we're going to talk about real quick is connecting people. And this is one that when you and I had breakfast a couple months ago, I think I gave you one of my favorite lines I used to do when I went to, because sometimes I'd go to one networking event Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, Wednesday lunch, Wednesday night, Thursday night. I mean, if I didn't go to 6 or 7 networking events in 1 week, it was not a good week. But once I kind of found my groove, I was talking to new people. One of my first lines I would say to people is I'd say, hey, Chris, who do you like to meet at events like this? Right. And that's just a conversation I had, and people will talk to you. That is a great
That's a great open-ended question.
It really is. Hey, who do you like to meet at these events? Because you don't come across as a jerk. You don't like, and here's the thing is, don't be a jerk. Like freaking listen. Like ask the question and listen and listen and listen. As networkers and business development people, yes, we have amazing ideas and we love to talk and we love to pontificate. But like, if you're going to ask this question, listen. What's another good startup conversation piece you could share, Chris?
Have you been here before? You know, and just ask. You know, I start up with usually just saying, "How you doing?"
Yeah.
And they either go into telling you how their day's been, and as long as somebody didn't ask you that first, and you just say, "Great," you know, I don't know. I usually just start telling them about when they say that. That's almost again getting into that permission based. And I speak to them as if they're a friend, like I've known them for 20 years. And I go into chatting about literally how the business week has been and how great, especially now, the industry is and what all is going on at the firm or with the networking events, you know, what I have coming up. And that just leads into further dialogue. That's what I typically do.
I love it. I love it. Hey, so talk to us a little bit, if you don't mind, about these awesome networking groups that you started and they're actually growing into other cities. That's super exciting for me to hear, because I'm a huge fan of yours, to hear that, you've got Atlanta and now you've got opening up in other cities. Chris, talk to us about your networking association.
We have, yes. So the Contractors, Closers, and Connections, CCC, has started in Atlanta 3 years back now. Just after 2021 here, we've opened up Tampa, which is wonderful. So they've been throwing monthly events, and the first event is about to emerge in Orlando, and we're in talks with Jacksonville. So emerging very quickly, we're trying to keep at a steady pace so that each event is quality, and we keep everything mainstreamed across each CCC chapter. But we're implementing some really great things to be unfolded here soon, to include a LinkedIn style type of platform that takes the in-person networking experience and allows everybody to integrate, communicate, and network on a virtual basis. So that's something that we'll be sending out to everybody soon for the people that come to these events, and it'll be of great value.
That's really cool. That's really cool. So what inspired, the last question is specifically about networking. Why start your own thing? Like we've got all these amazing networking events, which I'm sure you're still, a part of, or at least, benefiting from. We've got great networking groups. Why start your own thing? Like, what was the advantage in starting Contractors, Closers, and Connectors?
I guess just the need to do it better, to tell you the truth. I saw, I take the nuances and different pieces from each event that I've ever been to in the Atlanta area in the construction real estate industry. And I said, whether it be the types of people that come or the environments that we provide, they have to be high energy, but they have to be non-intimidating. We don't have to be uber professional and, make people feel like this is an extremely professional conference where you have to act a certain way. No, these are all about being laid back for the most part. There are some that we hold in the mornings that are presentation based, where there's a panel of speakers. And so there's different purposes for each event and different topics and intentions. But there's the people that we invite are from engineer to architect to commercial real estate broker, developer, contractor. So there's not many other associations out there doing that. And the way that I address the crowd and speak and make announcements and bring people up, there's just a lot of nuances that make CCC unique.
That's great. That's great. I know anybody that has attended one of your events, they leave like, I hate to say about some other network events, but they feel like their time was well spent. That's probably the most kindest way to say it. Time is well spent when they go to one of your networking events, and they feel like they're with great people. They feel like they walk away with a network that they've grown, which is powerful.
Well, I will mention something that everybody that comes to my events now, I've personally spoken to them and screened them for the most part, so that they don't come to this event knowing what, they know exactly what to expect and why they're coming. And I even shoot out a company list. So you know who's going to be there. There's no question. So you see their name tag and you say, I've been looking to speak with you, and they're already at this wonderful, fun, new development. Because obviously we in construction and real estate know exactly where all the new cool developments are. So why not throw a wonderful event there, Mm-hmm. And so at this next one, for instance, we're going to have live rock and roll music. We're going to have cigar humidors and charity benefits. So charity has been a big part of my events from the inception. We've helped the homeless and helped veterans and helped children and animals and all types of different causes. So by implementing each little piece to each event and adding those bricks of value, really just makes it an incredible experience, second to none.
I love it. All right. So normally I get into like some fixed questions, and normally a question I ask is what do you do to keep your mindset positive? But I'm going to twist it for you. And I want to say, like, what do you do to get your mindset positive and your energy right before a networking event?
Well, every day it's the workout. You know this, Mike. So if I didn't work out 6-7 days a week, it's most likely 7 days a week, and eat the right foods. I mean, you can't do right for people, and I can't serve the rest of my business professionals and people in my circle and my family if I'm not healthy, right? If I don't take care of the things in my own closet, how else am I going to help people? So I make sure to try to stay in top physical condition, and that helps on the mental side as well. So I read books as well that pertain to that same subject matter on individuals who have just really become leaders in their field and have a very motivational and positive attitude to the literature and the words in the book, and you hold on to little tidbits of it and you use it throughout your day, and it totally changes your outlook on life and business.
All right. Now, look, I'm not letting you off the hook. We get right before the networking event though, Chris. Like, what do you do? Like, that 90 minutes before, 60 minutes before, 30 minutes before the event starts. What are you doing to get yourself in the right state? Not too amped, not too chill. Like, what are you doing to get there, Chris?
Me, I'm always energetic, Mike. I don't know what to tell you there. I mean, before the event, here's what I do is I'm mentally preparing. I'm typically there most of the day. Like the last event I held was on one of the rooftop of Ponce City Market. And I was up there all day on my laptop, making sure things are prepared and are perfect. So you're not really worrying about any of that logistical stuff. All that's, you just have to let it play out. And, then there are the early birds, let's say they're vendors and they're starting to come and set up. So you take care of those people, you start networking with them and warming up with your vendors you already know for, let's say, the first hour. And then once people start showing up that you haven't met, you're welcoming them in, leading their hand into different places, making sure they get refreshments and enjoy themselves and what to expect throughout the night, things like that. So, it's just being there and almost living it through 1,000 times in your mind before it ever happens. You just have to wait for it to come to fruition.
I love it. I had a friend of mine. He's really big into NLP, like the neural linguistic programming. Anyway, he's into like programming your mind for stuff. Yes. And he always said that before a networking event, because he was somewhat of an introvert, he said that he would always hold, it's called the Wonder Woman pose, and he would hold it for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? When you stand there with your feet are wide and you put I think you take your hands and you put them on your hip and you stand your chest up.
I love that.
Breathe deeply. And he said he would hold that for 2 minutes. And he said for 2 minutes, and then he just felt like he had this superpower and he could just go in and do what he does. So I thought you'd appreciate that. Yeah. All right. So you and I are both book guys. I think when you and I last met, I think we shared some great books for each other. What's one, if you could only share one book with someone, what are we at? We're at the end of Q1 of 2021. What's the one book that you'd like to share?
Tim Glover's Relentless. It's a story about the trainer who trained Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and all types of different athletes. Somebody gave it to me recently and I've really enjoyed reading it, and just talks about what elevates a salesperson, a business person, or somebody in the sports world, or somebody in just their regular life to be larger than life and be, like the Tiger Woods of golf, and what what made their mindset and their life and everything they trained to be physically and mentally, how they differentiate themselves and take themselves to that next level. That's what this book is about. It's incredible, relentless.
I love it. I love it, Chris. Well, you are, I hope it doesn't sound like a bravado, but you really are sort of the Tiger Woods of networking in Atlanta right now. Like you are,
I
doing
appreciate
amazing.
that.
I think people can learn a lot. I think people would really benefit from, being a part of your events. So if someone wanted to get in touch with you and learn more about what you've got going on, what would they do, Chris?
Best would be is to email me, and I can send you some literature and different videos and links to what we've done in the past. You can email me at chrism@coopergc.com.
Okay.
And you can check out primarily we're on LinkedIn. That's the best place to see contractors, closers, and connections. So you can start there. And I'll send you some more details. Happy to chat with you about that. You could always look me up on LinkedIn and send me a message as well.
All right. Well, if anybody, I'm going to put your LinkedIn connection in the show notes. I'll put the Contractors, Closers, Connectors in the show notes, and your email in the show notes. But the last thing I got, Chris, is thank you so much. Like, thank you for your time. Thank you for, I got charged up just talking about networking. So really thanks.
Well, get ready for the next event. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well,
Pleasure.
you are fun. If you're fun, you're giving a great gift back to the community by putting people together, and we all appreciate you. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Office Marketing Podcast. Be sure to join the conversation on our YouTube channel, LinkedIn, and Facebook pages. If you enjoyed the episode, head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.